Month, and why it's History and not Heritage Month. Leah also and I went to Pine Bush Equity Team meeting for their discussion at the Building Equity Team meeting, and they're discussing a book. I have it right here. We're going to keep on talking, and it's about how to discuss race and other meaningful conversations in elementary school classrooms. Two of our equity committees, building equity committees in the elementary schools are reading this text and talking about it. Guilderland Elementary School is also doing the same, reading the same book. So they're going to be comparing notes as they go through. Myself and Jody met with the FMS Student Voice Subcommittee. They are busy at work on their initiative. They're doing a survey of students, and they're about to release that to the school to talk about holidays and representation. Also, Lee and I also attended the Equity Officers meeting for Capital Region BOCES, and we presented on how our district rolled out our culture and climate survey, and other districts are hoping to do the same. So the work that we are doing in this district is leading the way for other districts to follow suit. I think people are looking at what we're doing and trying to find ways to replicate our best practices. Lee and I also went to students' sources of strength training at the high school to view how the students were being trained for that program and to participate and to make students familiarized with our faces so that when we work together in the future, they know who we are. Lee and I also did a PD for our hall monitors in the middle school and the high school during Superintendent's Conference Day. We talked about the implementation of multi-tiered student supports and talked about how their role fits into a whole school or whole community type of environment and how they can better connect with each other and ourselves to make sure that the students are having a positive experience and understand that the role we find is critical and that no one is unimportant. Lastly, Lee and I also joined two other educators from NISKI and co-facilitated the first of 4 sessions for the Capital Region Affinity Group at Capital Region BOCES for a global majority, people of color, among the 24 districts. And that was a very positive program. And yes, and Leah and Jody Cahill in Farnsworth Middle School also did introduce the 7th grade students to a lesson in their math class on food insecurity. And it's nice mixing DEI with math and helping the students understand how they can bring their skills to bear in real world situations that really affect people's lives. So that was a really good session. And as we said, 2 of our building equity committees are reading the text. We're going to keep on talking about how to lead meaningful conversations in elementary school classrooms. And Leah's put together bringing one of the authors to the school, actually as a virtual meeting to discuss the book and see how we can leverage some of her practices in our classrooms for our students so that we can help them create community and help them sustain community as they deal with meaningful and difficult subjects at the elementary school. So that is, in a nutshell, my report for DEI in action.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Just wanted to mental note that I had forgot to start recording at the very beginning of the meeting. We did start at 7:05. We approved the minutes from October of 2025. Blanca first, Nina second, and the committee voted to agree on that. So that's essentially what I missed at the very beginning. So I apologize for having to step back to that. The next item on our agenda, reports from subcommittees. They'll share an update. Communications subcommittee met with the community engagement. And Blanca, Tara, or myself, I believe, were the three that are here tonight. Tony, I believe you were there as well. So would you like me to give the update? Okay. So we talked about a number of things. We decided to meet together with communications and community engagement because a lot of the work that we're trying to do overlaps each other. So, finding ways to engage the community and then what information are we sharing kind of makes sense that the two committees met. And we talked about numerous things. We decided to kind of ground our initial work in creating or finalizing a document on what DEI is and what DEI isn't for Guilderland, so that we have kind of a focal point. And we're going to use examples of things that are going on amongst our school populations currently in the district. With the current political climate of the United States at this point, we really thought it was good to level set for people as to what exactly our DEI program is, what it represents, things we want to do and where we want to go, just so people are clear on what it is. And so we decided that that's where we're going to start, or we're going to put something together that does use examples of things that we're doing in the district, as well as examples of things that are not DEI that maybe have been called DEI things at this point, so that then we'll have something, kind of in hand that we can share electronically. We can share in paper form. We can have an event, invite people to it, and then we sort of have a starting place to talk and engage community members, at that initial phase. Anyone else that was at that committee have something they'd like to add to that?
Excuse me.
Yeah, Tony?
Not so much to add to that, but in reflecting on what happened there right after the meeting, and again looking back at the minutes when I looked at them tonight, just the old notion: communication is a two-way street. So that the work that you just described sounds to me like very positive and good ideas about one side of the direction, one direction of communication. But we didn't really talk about what the other direction should be. What do people want of DEI? What do they expect? What do they want to happen as a result of what happens in the school district? Getting that flow, which also relates then to community engagement and stakeholders and what have you. I don't know how to do that exactly in this context, but there are lots of different ways to get that communication flow going in the other direction, and maybe that's something we can take up in our subcommittee meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very much our next step, right? I think our initial was to sort of like, we needed a starting point, and that really was kind of our conversation of how do we start. And our conversation was, a mile wide, and some of the points were a mile deep. So we sort of kind of coalesced it back into kind of like almost starting from scratch, if you think about it that way, so that we can engage people in conversations about things and kind of take their feedback. It may lead to a survey. It may lead to any number of things. And I think, Tony, you bring a good point. That is our next step, right? So once we get this thing off the ground and running with that, then the next step is, how do we get that feedback from our community, our stakeholders, so that we can then move forward in addressing the things that they talk about or the things that they want to highlight, either in our DEI program that are part of it, or things that they would love to see in our program as we move forward. So thank you.
Okay.
Any other comment from our subcommittee members on the communications and community engagement?
Nope, you covered it. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much. Moving on to the research subcommittee.
Okay. I was supposed to put the notes together and put them in. I was halfway through it before this meeting, so a lot of them are not up. So that is my responsibility. I'm about to finish it up, but I will say, in our meeting when we met, there were two things on the table: the culture and climate survey, and trying to get our heads around NICED's Portrait of a Graduate and the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework. Since the culture and climate survey is pretty well in hand, and will be given out, will be, released to the public, I think in the spring. They gave us
December.
in December, my fault.
That's good.
We'll be able to look at that later. So we focused our time on hearing from everyone with regard to Portrait of a Graduate and specifically the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework. And talking about getting our heads around what exactly, how do we translate those pages into practice? What are the things that we need to look out for in the big picture? And how can we help with the rolling out of these things? The rolling out of state initiatives is often difficult, and we don't always take every stakeholder's journey with those things into account. So we talked about some of the stresses that students, faculty, and community members may have with the changes that are coming and how they will impact us and in each group. So we said we wanted to get our head around that, and we wanted to start exploring this document more in full and maybe helping to facilitate some conversations around those topics. If anyone else who was there would want to posit any of their thoughts with regard to what I just said. All right, but that's pretty much what we're going to be focusing our energy is understanding the Portrait of a Graduate and how it relates to the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework, and really figuring out what that means in the big picture for preparing our district to move in that direction.
Thank you. Student Voices, Farnsworth, and GHS.
Did you want me to talk about Farnsworth, Eric?
Yes.
Okay, I had a feeling. Okay, let me turn my camera on. Okay, hi everyone. So at we've had a few student voice meetings at Farnsworth since we all last met, because it's kind of crunch time and the kids are so into the initiatives that we're doing. Like Derek mentioned earlier in his DEI in action report, our students want to educate the FMS community as to why we are getting all of these holidays off. So we were talking early in the year about some of our students didn't know why Yom Kippur was celebrated or why Diwali was celebrated, but they knew that they were getting these days off, so they must be important to members of our community. So a survey is going out on Monday to all of the FMS students about the different holidays that they celebrate in the winter months. And then our student voice members are going to put together a presentation for the TV news to just kind of highlight the most important holidays that kind of are born out of that survey, rather than assuming what the most important holidays to our school community is. So that's the biggest thing that we've been working on. They were kind of hoping that they wanted to push into classrooms, but it started to be a little bit of a time crunch. So we came to a middle ground and thought that we would make a video that could go on the TV news.
Very nice. Nina?
Yeah.
Hey, hi. I just have a quick question. That's great that the kids are doing that to really become aware of each other, which definitely taps into what Derek was talking about with the cultural responsiveness, and that's the key to it. My question is, because it's very challenging for the district to acknowledge all of the holidays that different groups celebrate. Obviously, we have to be selective with which days we do honor by having a day off. Do you know if the group is also going beyond the days that are listed in the calendar to address those other days as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's kind of where this is kind of coming from, is like what we've been talking about is we all have holidays that are important to us. And we kind of sat in a room and we were like, okay, everyone think in your head what holidays are important to you. And now think in your head which of those that you actually get off from school. And that's kind of where the conversation came from, is that there's holidays that are important to everyone in our building. But not everybody knows what those are. So this is kind of like that jumping off point that they were hoping to kind of get at with all of this.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. At the high school, there are 3 initiatives that are going on with our students. One is a DEI breakfast. They did one last year, and they wanted to do another one this spring. They were ambitious trying to do 2, but they decided that they needed to focus on just having one, giving all the planning and the logistics that they need to go through. And some of our students are working on that initiative. The other initiative is going to the middle school, and going to the elementary school, Linwood Elementary School in particular. And the students teaching a lesson on diversity, equity, inclusion for the students. They're putting together a lesson plan. They're going to be working with Teacher Corps. In fact, one of our students is a Teacher Corps student. And the rest of the students were going to attend some training through Educate to Empower, so that they have some skill sets and some material to use, some content to use to help them develop their lesson and bring it to the kids at the school. So they're very interested in preparing themselves to go down there, and also having a lesson that's meaningful for the students and helping them to understand a little bit more about how to build a community that's representative and be responsive to those around them. So I'm looking forward to what they're going to come up with when they're ready to go down there. The last initiative is what we call, is what I name RACs after listening to them. It's basically random acts of connection and kindness. And what the students were looking for is an initiative to help students feel more connected in their school environment and have a stronger sense of belonging. So they wanted to do a series of different initiatives during the school year that would be fun and that'd be interactive and help students talk to each other. And one of the things that they're doing right now is a bingo initiative, bingo board initiative for Thanksgiving. So next week, they'll be distributing bingo boards to all of the students, and through homeroom, and they'll be able to return them. And those who do will be eligible for raffles and prizes. But part of what's in the bingo board is give a shout out to a classmate you don't normally talk to, thank your bus driver, say thank you to a teacher, email, write a nice email to a teacher or a coach. So offer to help set up or clean up after class. So these are things that we're doing to let every stakeholder know in our district and in our buildings that they're appreciated and that they're seen and that they're valued. And we thought that that wave of kindness happening from time to time and those ways of reaching out will help people feel more connected. So these are totally student driven. The students came up with the bingo boards, and we just copied about 1,500 of them, I think, to be able to distribute to the homeroom. So they're going to be meeting with me tomorrow afternoon to separate them and give them to the homeroom teachers and get those out. And we're looking forward to seeing what will be the impact of this initiative across the school.
Thank you. And Tony, do you have a question?
No.
All right. Sorry, the light appeared around your box, around your picture.
Well, I have that impact on technology sometimes.
All right. Thank you for the subcommittee reports. Much appreciated, everyone. Moving on to number 3 under information items, our learning component. And I'm going to turn this back over to Derek.
Okay. I wanted to have a discussion with everyone, and it was definitely something that we raised in our steering committee as well. The portrait of a student, portrait of a graduate. I keep messing that up. I try to focus on it, and I keep doing just the opposite. Don't say student. Don't say student. Our portrait of a graduate that's going to be coming out from NYSED and building upon this culture responsive sustaining education framework. It's boasting a lot of changes that'll be upon us over the next, 4 years as they roll out this initiative. And one of the things I wanted to discuss is how do we break this down? And we wanted to talk about the way students would be experiencing what's coming. And so we included some documents for you. A student need to know document, a couple of core questions through NYSED. Why should students focus on cultures and students, and what do students gain from culture responsive education guides when culture responsive and sustaining education guides our education system? And also there was a portion from the culture responsive and sustaining education framework itself, which focused on students, which had 4 pages of very specific feedback that would be representative of how students could support those 4 pillars, which are, developing a welcoming and affirming environment, fostering high expectations and rigorous instruction, identifying inclusive curriculum and assessment, and also engaging in ongoing professional learning and support. So to start the conversation out, I was curious what stuck out to people about the expectations of students or the impact of students, or where they'd like to delve in. What was maybe even a question?
Yeah.
So sorry, Derek.
Go ahead.
Something that stood out to me that I think it was in the impact one. I was just searching to find the documents again. I can't find the email, but something that stood out to me was that what we don't really think about is that not only are we being responsive to like student cultures, but we're also helping to create an entire generation of students who are going to be culturally responsive of other people. And that's part of, like, when we were talking about the portrait of a graduate, that's part of being a 21st century learner. And I don't think that that's something we think about a lot, like the postgraduate impact that we're having. We think about the impact that we're having within the school walls. So I just think it's cool to kind of like track the continuum of the work that we're doing.
Definitely.
In other words, it's way more impactful than just to the school itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that longer term timeline, as it continues on and on and on, we're going to have more and more people who are culturally responsive, and hopefully that eliminates a number of concerns and issues, or lowers the number of incidences of the negative things that happen. So, Nina.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the district was already on that right path by using the future ready terminology. To me, future ready spoke to that as well. I mean, you can interpret it to mean, being aware of technology and things like that, which definitely has that aspect, but it's also being socially conscientious and recognizing how we are not just acting as our own individuals in the world, that we have a civic responsibility to be aware of the rest of the planet on multiple fronts. And I also applaud the state for continuing to encourage that momentum, given the different ways of looking at our role as being culturally, open-minded and listening to each other and not being afraid to dive into challenging topics. So I definitely think that our students benefit from that. I think that we definitely, with social media and those types of unfortunate explosive distractions that our students were absorbed by, I think that bringing this generation to where we need them to be, because they are the future, and that's our job, to prepare them to be able to be functional and be aware of the world. So I agree.
Definitely, Tony.
Um, I thought of a kind of a metaphor in trying to connect the high level goals and ideas in that portrait into, okay, well, what do you do about that? And one piece of the answer, one of the answers that began to occur to me was to think about health as a metaphor. We can come up with a picture of what good health looks like. We have that pretty much. But if we're trying to apply that picture to a person, you need to know about the person's condition relative to those characteristics of good health, because we're all different. I mean, I'm wearing hearing aids because I've got a hearing problem. Not everybody has a hearing problem. So the other side of the coin, so to speak, with respect to this portrait of a graduate, is where's Guilderland good and not so good with respect to those things? Because I don't have a clue at this point. My knowledge of the district has faded because our kids have been out of it for a long time. So how do we, as people who care about Guilderland School District, fill that other side of the picture in? This is the grand plan and what things should look like, but where are we relative to that, and where should effort be expended? Where are we doing pretty well and don't need to worry so much about that, versus where are the soft spots, where are the weaknesses? Because that's a tough question too.
Definitely. I think one of the challenges in education has been, as we are integrating the lived experiences of groups that have been historically marginalized from the educational system, we've had the challenge of trying to figure out how to integrate their experiences and their lives into what we do. And what this particular point of view brings to the table is that it views education as a cultural enterprise. I think before the notion that people had is that we added on cultural adornments of other people to what we do. It was one more thing, and I have to go out and learn this information. And this perspective that NYSET is bringing to the table through the culturally responsive and sustaining framework, that literature is saying that no, education is a cultural enterprise in and of itself. And so if we understand that, then, and we know that students learn through their cultural lens and point of view, then we need to take into account culture and its influence on learning, and also making sure that our teaching or our pedagogy acknowledges the lived experiences of the people that we lived in and prepares them for a world that is global at the same time. And that's an interesting challenge because everyone's looking to figure out where do I fit in this new thing? What do I need to learn or to know, or what areas do I need to grow to address the needs of the students who are in front of me? And how am I preparing them for that world? And where does my professional development fit in with preparing me to do that? So I think, folks have some concerns about, as how do we move into this aspirational context in a way that doesn't feel like we're, putting undue burden on any one particular part of the system. Of our, whether the students are taking on too much of a burden, or our teachers, or how do we share that burden? How do we help this unfold in a way that that recognizes that all cultures matter at the end of the day, and that helps them develop that appreciation as a basis for their learning and going forward into the world.
Comment, Benita?
Sorry, yeah. Tony, that's a great question. I think that your question actually has, if we could figure that out, right, that would not only help to deal with the issues of making culturally responsive students, but also help to deal with issues like bullying and communication and those breakdowns. So, I mean, I've been a strong proponent of circle training and helping students to learn how to communicate in ways that are fundamentally different than how we work with students, and basically teaching kids how to listen and find connections with each other. So it's not just that we're different. I feel like we're very similar. And I feel like getting to the root of who we are as humans helps us to feel a connection with others that we thought we were different from. Right. So, it's kind of an interesting example. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I taught a lesson in Russia. Did I bring this up before? I taught I wrote a lesson called The Four Freedoms, where students were to prioritize the four freedoms. There's freedom of, now I'm going to put this up. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from fear, and freedom from want are the four freedoms, right? The Norman Rockwell painting. I taught the lesson in the States, and I had the kids discuss in their little groups as to what they thought was the most important. And I'm going to have the committee guess, of the four freedoms, which one do you think American students chose was the most important? Freedom of speech, religion, freedom from fear, or freedom from want? This was in 2004, just to give you a time period here.
I vote fear.
I'd say freedom from want.
I'd say speech.
You got it, Derek. Freedom of speech. Our American students, they like their speech, right? So I had that mindset when I went to Russia, and I went and taught in a lyceum, which is an English-speaking school, for 2 weeks in Volgograd, which is Stalingrad. And I had to teach the same lesson, and amazing how many students are fluent in English, but we had a translator. I taught the same lesson, and not only did my students come up with beautiful presentations when they stood up to present to me, which I was like blown away by that, but they also chose living in Russia, right? This was the beginning of the initial Putin administration. So what do you think Russian students picked as the most important one? That one is freedom from fear. And that spoke to their inclination to allow for a government that is all protective, even if it means surrendering a liberty or two. Okay. So, I went there. This was not too long after the fall of the Soviet Union. And I was telling my colleagues in my self-righteous American mindset that, boy, you must love that there's no more Soviet Union. And they were like, actually, you know what? We don't have enough money, and we have to share a flat, and we knew what we were going to get. And, yeah, so I happen to know a lot of people tried to escape the Soviet Union for freedom, religious persecution, obviously, things like that. Obviously, it wasn't a place that was safe for many people. However, the mindset that we live in, we assume others have that same mindset, right? And just by being able to communicate with each other and learn from each other, I felt that my brain was full circle, right? It like completely, changed the way I perceived a lot of things that I thought I knew so well. So I think that it's not so much that we have to learn how to, learn about the cultures. We have to learn how to listen to the other cultures and listen to what we can get from them. I also want to say that from a tangible perspective of this being, it's hard to have a lot of philosophical discussions, but let's get down to it, right? For me, I think that the United States made some very poor choices when we drove away from social studies, and we drove away, even though we had the increase in science education, with the competition with NASA, it really in recent years has been math and ELA, which are important. However, students without fundamental understanding of content and, relationships. And here's the thing, the social studies framework is very much based in perspective taking and understanding how to really develop clear reasoning by analysis. And that to me is such an inherent skill that we are starving our elementary level students from learning that. And if we're not providing them with the basic understanding of extrapolating information from comparative analysis of documents and learning about other cultures, then we're not giving them what they need as they grow older. Their brains are the most, wanting that information, and we are developing their brains to become a certain skill, or should achieve a certain skill, but we're ignoring these skills that are fundamental to communication understanding.
That was a nice mic drop moment. I think, the last, was it the Common Core rollout did not go so well. And I think the focus was on math and ELA, and obviously social studies and science. Science to a large extent because people didn't know what STEM was until, and now pedagogy of STEM is really taking on new dimensions as people try to figure out how to incorporate that in what they do. But I think this is a definite turning point, an opportunity for us. The vision for SED with regard to this framework was that students would be academically successful, but they be prepared for rigor and independent learning, which I thought was an interesting vision to put out there, that they want students to be able to learn independently, that they wanted them to be social politically conscious and social culturally responsive. So it looks like we are moving back toward where we left off from the old school civics to to social studies, and bringing that back into some level of continuity between the three, and seeing the linkages, whether it's interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, or transdisciplinary thinking. And they want students to have a critical lens to challenge inequitable systems, access, power, and privilege. So I think our students are asking for this. When we meet with the students, they want to have these discussions. I think that sometimes it's difficult for teachers to have these conversations in the current climate because they're worried about influences from outside the school impacting those discussions. And when I first came here, that was one of the first things that I felt from the door, was that teachers weren't comfortable holding certain controversial topics or discussing them because they were worried about censure from outside. And that is something that we can help with, I think, when it comes to preparing a way to be able to have these conversations, because literally this is the direction that we're moving, and it's something that students are asking for, even our student forums and in our student organizations.
All right. Thank you. Anything else on the learning component discussion for tonight? Seeing none. Anyone else have anything for the good of the order? You're a quiet bunch tonight. I don't know.
Yeah. Every once in a while it moves that direction, I find.
I would just comment one little comment on what Nina said. There's something so powerful about actually getting in face to face with the culture that you know nothing about. It's not like reading about Russia. it's a full body experience. It seems to me that's a really important idea to build into when you're talking about cultural responsiveness and people working well in other cultures and so forth. It's got to be something real, some kind of real experience, not just you read about it in a book or watch a video. It's on the ground, face to face. This is what it smells like, kind of experience that I think really has an impact.
I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why when kids have opportunities to study abroad and that sort of thing, it's so beneficial for them. So, how do we take this culture responsive requirement and create that for students home? How do we bring that here, right? I completely agree.
Yeah, I liked how you mentioned the Future Ready initiative that has already been part of our district and how that is connected. And Jody actually mentioned it earlier with regard to students being able to thrive in college and careers and as engaged citizens in the world. That's the goal, and helping students meet that need is the challenge that lies before us, and paving the way so that students can engage in these things. And what can we do as a district level committee to help our stakeholders understand where we're moving, and as a state, I know in the midst of everything else that's going on, and how can we help smooth, or I don't want to say smooth, but help make the transition tenable for all of our stakeholders and address their concerns as we move forward, so they can see themselves in the changes that are coming.
Very true. Thank you. Anyone have any other comments for this evening? Going once?
Yeah.
I
Twice?
think James does. James does.
Yeah, just a point of probably being repetitive here, but Nina and Derek make very good points about this social studies / civics issue, and I think from where I sit, what the schools did with STEM, that we need to do that on this issue here. From where I sit, the emphasis to get more students interested in STEM seems to be pretty successful for the students interested in it. Well, we have to do the same thing with the social studies and civics part of it, because in my view that's even more important than STEM. End of
Now
comment.
more than ever. Now more than ever, James.
I won't necessarily disagree with you, but as a former science teacher, I think I put them on par importance level wise. But
Where we can blend them, that helps. I mean, Jody's not tooting her horn, but as a math teacher, she's brought in a lot of social issues for our students to bring to bear. We talked about the food insecurity unit that she did with Leah in her classroom. And that was one of a couple of different units that they brought to bear that allow students to look at social issues, but use their skill sets to address them and to think about them. And it's easily transferable if we're, talking together to other disciplines. And if we were doing some things concurrently in our planning, that would make that really easy to see how we can see it across across the board curricularly. So there are a lot of innovative minds in our district that, I think will take off and need to be amplified in terms of the things that they're doing in the classroom, because we have some pretty amazing teachers who are putting together some pretty innovative programs. Some who are just recognized by NYSED and are doing some amazing things. So we would definitely want to amplify those voices as we move forward too.
Very true. All right. Anything else for the good of the order, folks? Thank you very much for the lively and important conversation that we have. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Nina, and seconded by Blanca. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks. Have a great night.
Have a
Okay,
good
good
night.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Night.